What if one of the most unexpected BTS moments in Busan had nothing to do with a stage, a microphone, or a massive crowd? What if it was simply Jimin bringing the people closest to him into a place connected to his family, ZM-illennial? And the biggest question is, did Jimin actually take the BTS members there? Picture Busan. The city is glowing. The streets are alive. The atmosphere is completely different from an ordinary BTS schedule. Everywhere you look, there is anticipation, excitement, and that unmistakable feeling that something special is happening. And somewhere away from the noise, there is a name that carries a very personal connection to Jimin, ZM-illennial. For many ARMY, the name immediately means something more than food. Because when Jimin's family is involved, the story suddenly becomes personal. This isn't just about a restaurant. It isn't simply about where someone ate. It raises a much more emotional question. Would Jimin really bring his BTS members into a place connected to his family? And if he did, what happened when they got there? Because there is something about Jimin that makes moments like this especially fascinating. On stage, he can be unbelievably confident. Under the lights, thousands of people can be screaming his name. But when the conversation turns toward his family, his hometown, or the places that shaped him before BTS became BTS, there is often another side of Jimin. A quieter side. A more personal Jimin. And that's exactly where this story becomes interesting. Because long before the world knew Park Jimin as a global superstar, he was simply a kid from Busan. Busan wasn't a backdrop. It was home. The streets. The food. The memories. The people. The environment that existed before the stadiums, before the cameras, before millions of fans knew his name. So imagine Jimin returning to that world after becoming one of the biggest stars on the planet. And then imagine the people standing beside him. RM. Jin. Suga. J-Hope. Jungkook. V. The same members who watched him grow through some of the most difficult years of BTS's journey. That's what makes the possibility of this restaurant visit so intriguing. Because if Jimin did bring them there, it wouldn't simply be a casual meal. It could represent something much deeper. But there's an important distinction we need to make before going any further. The claim that all BTS members visited ZM-illennial with Jimin should not be treated as confirmed unless there is reliable evidence directly documenting that specific visit. And that matters. Because the internet can transform one photograph, one rumor, or one fan comment into an apparently confirmed event within hours. So today, we're separating the emotion from the assumption. We're focusing on Jimin. We're asking what is actually known, what makes the rumor so compelling, and why ARMY became so fascinated by the idea. And trust me, the deeper you look into Jimin's connection with Busan, the more meaningful this becomes. There is something almost cinematic about Jimin's journey. Imagine taking a young boy from Busan, placing him inside an audition room, giving him a chance that could have disappeared at any moment, and eventually watching him perform in front of tens of thousands of people across the world. That transformation is extraordinary. But success has an interesting way of changing your relationship with home. When you become famous, familiar places stop being completely ordinary. A street you once walked down can suddenly become a location fans want to photograph. A restaurant connected to your family can become a place people recognize around the world. And something as simple as having dinner can suddenly become part of a global conversation. That's the strange reality surrounding Jimin. He can travel across continents. He can walk into luxury hotels. He can attend international fashion events. He can perform under enormous stadium lights. Yet there is still something deeply emotional about seeing him connected to Busan. Because Busan represents the beginning. And ZM-illennial is connected to that personal side of his story. Now imagine Jimin standing outside the restaurant. The atmosphere is calm. No giant stage. No elaborate choreography. No dramatic lighting. Just a familiar place in his hometown. And then imagine him turning around and seeing the members of BTS beside him. Wouldn't that be surreal? The world sees BTS as a global phenomenon. But inside that restaurant, they could simply be 7 friends sharing a meal. And that possibility is exactly what captured ARMY's imagination. But there was another question hiding underneath it. Why would Jimin want to bring them there in the first place? And that's where the story gets even more interesting. For Jimin, family has always been a subject that can instantly soften the atmosphere. Think about the contrast. One moment, he's performing with incredible intensity. The next, he's talking about something personal and his expression changes. His voice becomes softer. His smile becomes different. The superstar disappears for a second. And you're reminded that underneath all the fame is a son who grew up with parents who supported his dreams. That's why a restaurant connected to his father naturally carries emotional weight. It's not simply a business name. It's connected to the world Jimin knew before BTS. Before ARMY. Before the Billboard charts. Before international tours. Before the flashing cameras. And maybe that's why the idea of sharing that space with BTS feels so meaningful. Because BTS wasn't just a workplace for Jimin. Those members became part of his life. They experienced exhaustion together. They experienced uncertainty together. They experienced success together. They watched each other change. And through all of that, Jimin's Busan identity remained part of who he was. So if Jimin ever looked at the members and said something as simple as, "Let's go eat here," that sentence would sound ordinary. But emotionally? It would mean much more. It would be like opening a door into his personal world. And perhaps that's why fans became so curious. Because there is a huge difference between seeing BTS on stage and imagining BTS sitting together at a table in Jimin's hometown. No choreography. No microphones. No performance. Just food, conversation, laughter, and 7 people who have spent years together. But then comes the question every viewer is probably asking. Did it actually happen? This is where we have to slow down for just a moment. Online discussions about BTS can move incredibly fast. A fan posts something. Another account repeats it. Someone adds a caption. Someone else turns the caption into a headline. And suddenly, a possibility starts being treated like a confirmed event. That's why it's important not to say, yes, all BTS members definitely went there, unless there is credible documentation confirming it. Instead, the more accurate question is, why did the idea of Jimin taking BTS to ZM-illennial become so compelling? And the answer may be simpler than people think. Because fans already understand how meaningful Busan is to Jimin. They know his roots are important. They know his connection to his hometown has remained visible throughout his career. And they know that BTS members have shared countless personal experiences together. So when those elements collide, the imagination naturally starts filling in the gaps. Jimin. Busan. His father's restaurant. BTS. One table. Suddenly, you can almost see the scene. But there's another detail that makes the imagined moment especially powerful. Jimin wouldn't be introducing strangers. He would potentially be introducing his closest friends to a part of the world that existed before their fame. And that changes everything. Let's imagine the atmosphere, not as a confirmed event, but as the kind of moment fans picture when they hear this story. The door opens. Jimin walks in. Perhaps he's relaxed. Perhaps he's wearing something simple. No stage outfit. No dramatic entrance. Just Jimin. And then the members follow. Suddenly, the quiet atmosphere changes. Someone laughs. Someone looks around. Someone asks about the menu. Another member starts teasing Jimin. And Jimin? He's probably trying to act completely normal. But you know that feeling when you're showing your friends somewhere important to you? You don't need to say much. You just watch their reaction. You want to know. Do they like it? Do they feel comfortable here? What do they think? Now imagine Jimin watching the members discover something connected to his family. That would be a completely different kind of pride. Not the pride of standing on stage after receiving an award. Not the pride of hearing thousands of people scream his name. Something much quieter. Something personal. And perhaps that's why this story resonates. Because success is often measured by how far someone travels. But sometimes the most emotional moment is when they return home and bring the people they love with them. Now let's talk about the reactions. Because if BTS ever gathered together at a restaurant connected to Jimin's family, fans would naturally wonder which member would react first. Would Jin immediately make a joke? Would Jungkook become curious about the food? Would V quietly look around and take everything in? Would RM ask Jimin questions about the restaurant? Would J-Hope bring his usual energy into the room? Would Suga simply sit back and enjoy the atmosphere? And what about Jimin? He might be watching all of them. That's the part one find most interesting. Because Jimin has spent years sharing the spotlight with these members. But introducing them to something connected to his family would put him in a completely different position. For once, he's not the performer. He's the hometown guide. He's the person saying, "This is where I'm from." And that is powerful. Because there are some things you cannot explain through interviews. You have to show them. You have to take someone there. You have to let them experience the place for themselves. And if Jimin really did share that kind of experience with the members, it could explain why fans find the idea so touching. There's another layer to this story. Jimin exists between two worlds. The first is enormous. Global. Loud. Fast. The world of BTS. The world of stadiums and international travel. The world where millions of people know his name. And then there's the other world. Much smaller. Much quieter. Busan. Family. Home. Memories. The people who knew him before the world did. And perhaps one of the most beautiful things about Jimin is that these two worlds don't necessarily have to remain separate. Imagine bringing the people from your extraordinary present back into the place that shaped your ordinary past. That's emotional. And that's why this story isn't really about a restaurant. It's about where Jimin came from. It's about how far he traveled. And about the people who traveled alongside him. Busan itself adds another layer. There's something distinct about seeing Jimin in his hometown. The atmosphere feels different. The connection feels stronger. Maybe it's because we know that behind the global superstar is someone who grew up there. And every hometown carries invisible memories. The roads. The buildings. The food. The sounds. The familiar places. Things that may seem ordinary to everyone else can become deeply emotional when you've been away from them for years. Now imagine returning with 6 people who have witnessed nearly every chapter of your adult life. That's not just a trip. That's a reunion between different versions of yourself. The young Jimin from Busan. And the Jimin the world knows today. And somewhere between those two versions is BTS. So let's return to the original question. Did Jimin take BTS to his father's restaurant, ZM-illennial, while BTS was in Busan? The honest answer is, unless there is reliable, direct evidence confirming the specific visit, we shouldn't present it as an established fact. But that doesn't make the story meaningless. Far from it. Because the reason people are talking about it tells us something. ARMY aren't simply fascinated by where BTS eats. They're fascinated by the personal relationships behind the global image. They want to see the moments that don't happen under stage lights. They want to see Jimin laughing with the members. They want to see Jungkook teasing Jimin. They want to see Jin making everyone laugh. They want to see RM asking questions. They want to see Suga relaxing. They want to see J-Hope bringing energy into the room. They want to see V enjoying the moment. Because those ordinary moments can sometimes reveal more than a 2-hour concert. And Jimin? He's at the center of this particular story. Think about what it means to become famous at a young age. Suddenly, people care about everything. What you wear. Where you go. What you eat. Who you're with. Where your family lives. But despite that overwhelming attention, there are still pieces of your life that remain deeply personal. For Jimin, his connection to Busan is one of those pieces. And when fans see him connected to places associated with his family, there's an emotional reaction because it reminds everyone. Before Jimin was Jimin from BTS, he was simply Jimin. A son. A student. A kid with dreams. A young man who wanted to perform. And then everything changed. The dream became reality. The reality became global fame. And suddenly, places from his childhood became part of the story millions of people wanted to understand. That is an incredible transformation. Now imagine the final moment of that hypothetical dinner. The plates are almost empty. The conversation has slowed down. The noise isn't as intense. Maybe someone is laughing quietly. Maybe Jimin looks around the table. And for a second, he isn't thinking about charts. He isn't thinking about concerts. He isn't thinking about cameras. He's just looking at the people who have been beside him. The people who shared hotel rooms with him. The people who practiced until exhaustion. The people who stood beside him during difficult years. The people who celebrated his victories. And now they're sitting in Busan. Near his roots. Near the world that existed before everything changed. That image is powerful because it doesn't require a huge speech. Sometimes the most emotional moments are silent. A look. A smile. A laugh. A simple meal. And if something like that truly happened, perhaps the most meaningful part wouldn't be the restaurant at all. It would be the fact that Jimin chose to share a piece of home. We often talk about BTS through numbers. Millions of views. Sold-out stadiums. Awards. Records. Chart positions. But numbers can't explain friendship. Numbers can't explain nostalgia. Numbers can't explain what it feels like to return home. And they certainly can't explain what it means to share that home with people who helped you become who you are. That's why Jimin's connection to Busan remains so fascinating. Because it reminds us that even when someone reaches the highest level of global fame, there can still be a place that makes them feel like themselves. And maybe that's what makes the idea of ZM-illennial and BTS so interesting. Not because it's glamorous, but because it's personal. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think Jimin would bring the BTS members to a place connected to his family if he had the chance? And if you've seen reliable evidence about the members visiting ZM-illennial, tell us what you found in the comments. Not rumors. Not assumptions. Show us the moment that convinced you. Because sometimes the smallest details reveal the biggest stories. And Jimin's story is a reminder that no matter how far he travels, no matter how enormous the stage becomes, there will always be something incredibly special about seeing him return to where it all began. If this moment made you look at Jimin's Busan connection a little differently, share this video with another ARMY who would appreciate it. And if you want more emotional BTS moments focused on the members beyond the stage, you already know what to do. Stay with us.